Hello, I'm Michelle.
And I'm Laura, and this is the Pair Entrepreneurs Club podcast, a weekly show to help you navigate the demands of being a working parent.
We will share lots of practical ideas, hints and tips, and our own and others' experiences with juggling work, family, health and finances. Above all, we want to help you find your purpose, define your identity, and banish any confidence gremlins that might be holding you back from the life you dream of. No matter whether you have children or not, there will be something here for you. Let's get started.
Welcome to another episode of Pair Entrepreneurs Club podcast. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Rob Taylor from Dads in Business. So, Rob, please introduce yourself, tell our listeners a little bit about you. That'd be great.
Yeah, so good morning. Thank you for having me along. It's nice to be here and contribute to your podcast network. So thanks for having me. My name's Rob. I have a project called Dads in Business, designed to help busy working dads bring the best of themselves to home and to work. Dads in Business is just one of the projects that I have. They're really to help me more than anything understand what it's like to be a dad, and if I can try and help others by increasing and raising the bar for conversations about navigating that dad life, then all the good. I'm happy to do it. I think it's an important topic that I found from my own experiences when, I guess, unnoticed, underspoken about. So Dads in Business is there to raise the bar for the conversation about being a dad.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think, we tend to find, and particularly as a woman myself, there's a lot of support out there for women in business, for mums in business, and sometimes you find that there's not quite so much for dads, or you're a bit overlooked sometimes.
I think so. There's some research, and we reference it quite often in the work that we do. It was the Fatherhood Institute back in, I think, 2019, did some research around support for moms and dads in the workplace. And I think at the top line, it suggests that 80% of working dads are parents, but 70% of those working dads say that there's less support available for them than there are their mother counterparts. And I can connect with that because when I first became a parent, I was still employed. It was my last employment. And I always remember the time I came back off my 2 weeks maternity leave. It was almost like I've been on holiday. People always said, "Oh, how was your break?" It's like, well, it's not really a break. I've got this new person in my life I need to be responsible for and looking after. So there was a very much, and there still exists, I believe, that culture and stigma around the dad role. It's always about go out to be the breadwinner, but then you should be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that and you should be doing that. And it all just gets a bit of a muddle. And I think as I started working for myself, I had a 2-year-old that our first child was then 2 and my wife was pregnant with our second. I got made redundant, which is what forced me into self-employment. And I think over time, in hindsight, I sort of looked back and thought, well, this is quite difficult. What are you supposed to do? Because you go home from work and the missus might say, "How's work?" You say, "Well, everything's fine. It's all good. Don't worry." Even if you've had a bad day, you still have to take that inside and say, "Well, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry." You could go to the pub with your mates and they'll say, "You don't want to talk about babies crying at night. You want to go and talk about football." So there was no way to talk about that. And then you go back into your professional setting. "How's everything at home?" "Well, I don't want to bother people, so I'll just say everything's fine, even though I've not slept for 3 months, and I need to know how I'm going to pay my bills. Everything's fine." And I just found it became quite a lonely place, if you like. And these feelings of guilt around, well, I should be at home right now, but I'm at work, or I should be at work right now, but I'm at home, or I should be seeing my friends right now, but I'm at home, and I should be looking after myself, but I haven't got the time. It was a very big push and pull. And I thought, well, is it just me? It can't just be me that feels this, that thinks this. There has to be others. So I started, I guess, raising my hand, putting my head above the parapet, thinking, hang on, where can I go as a busy working dad to talk? Is anyone else thinking about this stuff? And it was refreshing to see, which goes back to the point around the support for women and moms. There are a lot of moms and partners tagging in husbands on my social posts saying, this sounds like you. Connect to this person. This sounds like you. This sounds like just what you've been saying. So some were doing it in secret, almost like reaching out and saying, I saw your post. I like that. I can connect with this. Others were sort of introduced through their partners, which was great to see. But I think what it did was expose that gap in provision. There isn't that structured provision around as obviously available for dads as there is for moms. I think that exists. And in the work we've done with organisations across the world, it's common. I think it's something like 70% of blokes still think there exists stigmas about what a man and a dad should do and should be. And it always goes back to the professional setting. Yet we're told we have to be more present at home as well. So there's a real push and a pull. And it's a fascinating story that I think has got a long way to go. But there are people starting to have that discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from my perspective, equality is something that is just so hard to achieve. And, the discrepancies are on both sides. But certainly, going back to what you said there about having 2 weeks paternity leave and just feeling like you'd had a holiday, I think that's a crucial part. And there's a big campaign at the moment. I volunteer for Pregnant Then Screwed, and they're really campaigning to get 6 weeks paternity leave. But even then, it's like, how can you create that bond? Is that something you struggled with, to create bonds with your children at that short period?
I think the roles were so, like, we never spoke about the roles. It's just you fall into the roles. So there's never sort of any understanding or agreement. It was like, well, I've had my 2 weeks. I'm going back to work as hard as I can. And then I'm going to come back exhausted. I was working a lot of nights at the time in the entertainment industry. I'd be coming home sometimes at like 4 or 5 in the morning. My wife would then be up at 5 in the morning. And it's like, we just wouldn't see. And I think there was no agreement about whose roles are doing what. We just fell into place. Because obviously, the mom needs more time. There has to be that bonding around it. But I do think there's a lot of stigma around get back to work. You've got to go and work now. You've got to go and graft. That's your role. And I don't know where I sit. I mean, obviously, someone has to make the money. Yeah, you have to go back to work somewhere. But I do think there needs to be more understanding in some respect about how it can be more flexible or how it can be supported, that the dad is more present. Because if not, we're just going to create another generation where, well, we grafted, you grafted, man grafts. That's what happens. And if that's what you want to happen, great, nice one. Someone's got to go and earn the bills. But I do think we need better conversation about it and how those expectations across the workplace.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you're 100% right. It is those better conversations. And for me, I think it's around setting boundaries as well. So what are the expectations? You said there about you and your wife just kind of fell into those roles. And I think we all do that. There's no guidebook, is there? There's not like, oh, you have these duties, I have these duties. It's just, let's just go on and muddle on. And I think from my perspective, what I found really difficult is my husband works away quite a lot. And I'd almost resent him for the fact that he's out in a nice hotel somewhere, having a really nice meal, out with his colleagues and having a few drinks. And I'm sat at home trying to get a piece of toast for my tea because I've got so much else going on. And there's that kind of, I think sometimes as women, we put the expectation on ourselves that the house has to be really clean. We have to, go to the gym or whatever that might be, to do all that kind of self-care for yourself as well. And we don't talk about it. So instead of having that, well, actually, is there something that we could help each other on, and set some clear kind of, you maybe do the laundry or whatever it is and split those chores out. It is that communication.
This is it. No one talks, do they? We just assume things because, likewise, like your husband, I do a bit of travel for work. And while I'm sure, I've heard it from my wife before, oh, you've been away on almost like a holiday.
Yeah.
There's some travel or whatever. And it's a good experience to travel, don't get me wrong. But there are times when you're away and you think, oh, I wish I was back at home. I wonder what kids are doing. And you do get those guilt pangs. It happens. But you can't go back and say, I felt guilty while I was in the bar last night on my work trip, because that won't really be met with much empathy. But I do think that silent sort of not agreeing or expecting about what the house needs to do. Not just like, you're at home, you do all the washing. It's like, well, what expectations and agreements shall we make together? And it's and I fell into this trap. We still do, but it's so much better when everyone knows what they're doing and everyone else knows what the other person's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big realization, from me personally as well, is to actually have those conversations and say, yeah, let's just talk about this, because there's nothing worse than, I feel for my husband, because he'd come home to a wife that's absolutely resenting him being away, and at that point I'm angry and cross, and I just want to hand over the child and the dog and everything and walk away. So it's understanding that perspective and putting yourself in the other person's shoes as well. And I think for me as well, it's having a bigger life goal. So if you're, a family unit, what are you striving for? Because there are going to be times when you're tested and, your resilience drops, and how do you manage to keep on top of that?
Yeah, it's a challenge, isn't it? And I think, you referenced it earlier, no one teaches us how to be parents. And I have to say, no one teaches dad in school. We have to muddle through. We have to figure it out ourselves to the best that we can. And I think in the early days of working for myself, it was a case of, I'm just going to get busy. I'm just going to get as busy as I possibly can, because that's my role. That's what I have to do, because that equals success. And we see it so often, especially with men and dads. Busy equals success. First question you ask, how busy are you? Yeah, really busy.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm busier. Oh, you must be doing well. And we forget and lose sense of ourselves, I think, when we realise I've been that busy. I've not been to the gym. I've not been doing my exercise. I've not been home for bedtime. I've not been out on a date night because I've been so busy. It's like, well, why is that success? I think it's a bit of a challenge that we have to overcome.
Absolutely. Something I'm really passionate about is defining what is success, because that is different to every person. And we are so fixated on, exactly as you said, being busy or having financial freedom or whatever that is. And it just feels like it puts more pressure on people. And I think we're, as parents, you get to a time in your life where you're starting to, then your parents are getting older. So there's elements of, that's coming and you're going to have to look after them. So you're getting it from both sides. How do you find, as a business owner as well, what are your kind of tools and techniques for keeping that resilience, or, being able to cope with that?
Yeah, as you know, working for yourself is difficult. You're going to get a lot of rejections and pushback. And I think from a professional sense, I think you just have to go back to, well, why are we doing this in the first place? What are we doing it to achieve? I very much wanted to set out working for myself, I guess from a more negative perspective, was to prove everyone wrong. I can do it on my own, and I'm going to prove a point. I kind of got to that point and I thought, okay, well, I've proved everyone wrong. What am I doing this for? Why have I just missed 4 bedtimes? Oh God, it's dragging me down. You have bad months at work. Oh, it's really dragging me down. It's hard to get my chin up. But I just think for me, that reconnecting to, well, why are we doing it in the first place? I set out very clear goals. I work for myself, therefore I want to take a month off in the summer, and I want to take this time off in Christmas. And by building into your professional life benefits in the personal life as well, i.e. we get this month off in the summer, if we figure this out for work, those no's or those rejections or pushback in a professional sense are easier to take, because you just think, okay, well, what's next? How else am I going to get there? And how else am I going to get there? And you've just got to be disciplined around it, because I think there's so many gurus online that are really becoming quite toxic. You're a failure unless you scale your business. You're a failure unless you're 10xing. You're a failure unless you're working 16 hours a week. I don't want to be 16 hours a day. I don't want to be working 16 hours a day. I want to do what I can do in the time that I allow myself, and then go home and try and be around for what I can be at home as well. So I think we have to ignore the noise if we want to help our resilience in a professional sense. And as long as we're doing what it is that we want to do, and we have agreement from our home life to do, those rejections and pushbacks become a whole lot easier to take, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about this with a lot of guests on the podcast, and certainly ignoring some of that noise, particularly with social media and the things that we switched on to, and forever comparing ourselves. And it's that comparison of, if you're looking at people who you think, oh, I'm better than them, you can get your egos too inflated, and vice versa. If you're looking at people and saying, oh well, I'm not as good as them, and that knocks your confidence. So there's never a good comparison.
Well, there isn't, is there? And I think it's good to take influence from those you look up to or you admire, and think, well, and there is a balance, because I think as a business owner or entrepreneur, even someone who's employed in a good career, there has to be a level of ambition. I want more, but I'm also happy with what I've got, and that's something that I struggle with sometimes. I can get quite impatient because I know there's more, but that more has to mean something. Getting money for money's sake, what's the point? I've got all this money, but what am I doing with it? But my kids are miserable. I've not seen them in 3 weeks. What's the point in getting all this money then? So at what cost are we chasing that career? I think has to be looked at as well.
Absolutely. And I think, I've witnessed people who've worked and worked and worked, and business has been their everything. They've got pots and pots of money, but never have a holiday. And then the moment they hit, retirement age, they either don't know what to do with themselves, or the sad fact is that they die because they've got nothing else to live for. And you think, gosh, there's got to be more to it than taking all that, taking all that money to your grave. It's not worth it.
Exactly. I don't think people realise that until, like you say, they're too old.
Yeah.
So I think there's very much and I think I keep hearing it's happening more with the younger generation. I'm probably not in that younger generation anymore. I'm turning 40 this year. But they want an employer with a purpose. They want a career with a purpose. They want to build a business that contributes to a lifestyle, not just work for work's sake. And I think that's a refreshing approach. But likewise, we can't ignore that it is hard work as well. And somewhere hard work does have to happen. Things aren't just going to come to us because we say so. There has to be an element of hard work, but it's with those boundaries that I think you set and you stay in control of that will help to your point of resilience.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah. Thank you for that. I want to ask you as well about your Book of Dad and your Dad Deck. Can you tell our listeners a bit about that, please?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks. So, the Book of Dad is, again, I like to learn whilst I'm doing in my Dad's in Business project. Like I said in the introduction, it's very much there to help me as it is anyone else. It's definitely not a tool to preach or tell people how to be a dad. And I was on holiday once, I think it was 2 years ago maybe, and I thought, well, how can I develop this to try and help more people and help myself? So I took I guess a coaching structure from a professional setting. I thought, okay, well, this might work for dads as a journal, for want of a better word. But how? Well, how do we apply it? How do we make it practical? Because often dads will say, well, it all sounds great, but what can I actually do? I need something to do. I need something to get my hands on. I need something that I can change this week, that I'm going to see a result from and a benefit from. All this, mindset waffle is just words. What can I do? So I thought, okay, that's an interesting challenge. So a lot of feedback that we were getting from the work that we do, dads always talk about things that we think fall into 4 buckets. There's the work bucket. There's the home bucket, i.e. your family, your relationships. There's the money bucket. And then there's ourself, our fitness, our hobbies. You might find yourself saying things like, I used to do that, or I remember when. Because very often it's us that sacrifice ourselves first. I don't go to the gym anymore. I ain't got time. It's a classic line. So those 4 broad areas are things that we got a lot of feedback around. And within those 4 areas, I then created challenges in each of them that were very practical, things to focus on. So, for example, I knew that I missed bedtime 3 or 4 nights in 1 week. A few years back, I thought, oh, that's made me feel horrible. So therefore, in the family and relationships one, I've written a chapter, if you like, around how I overcame that, the challenge I did, and what I can try and do continuously to improve it. And then in the back of that, there's the coaching structure that is, okay, your challenge this week is to be home 5 nights a week in time for bed. How does that make you feel? Because I know for me, that made me feel, well, God, there's going to be sacrifice at work. It might be stressful at home, and I might just want them to go to bed. It's going to be push and pull around. What else am I missing out on? So there's a lot of conflict going on. And then it's a very structured process of, okay, well, what do you want to achieve from this? Who can help you? What if it goes wrong? What does good look like? And it's a very much a self-reflective piece in that case, but guided from my own experiences, which are far from perfect, but definitely real. Because I think sometimes, going back to that guru thing, we can hear a lot of preaching and a lot of do this, do that if you want to be a better dad. It's like, well, no, I struggle too. And if I can share some of that experience and how I've tried, then hopefully it'll help others. So that's the journal. And then the dad deck, this is just how my mind works. Conveniently, there were 13 challenges across each of the 4 topics. So 13 in money, 13 in work, 13 in self, 13 in relationships. And I thought, oh, that makes 52. Oh, that's a deck of cards. So what I've done is I've packaged the 52 chapters into more, they're almost like cue cards or talking point cards where you can quickly just take one out and say, okay, this week I'm going to focus on my work and what I can do to contribute to generating 5% more revenue. That's going to be my focus. And I can take that in and we can have a discussion at work about that, or a discussion at home. If you were to get £10,000 today, what would you do with it? Let's have a discussion about that. So they're more sort of talking cards in that respect. So conveniently, there was 52. Conveniently, that's either a year's worth if you focus on one per week, but it's also a nice little gamification of what it's like to be a dad, ultimately.
Yeah, I love that, and that's a real talking point as well. So is that something you use like within organisations to try and promote dads to have that conversation amongst each other, or?
Yeah, it will be more. How we work with employers is we have what we call a discovery session where we go into an organisation who might not have explored or tried to understand better the men and dad position in that workplace. And we invite everyone, everyone's welcome along, because we'll share insights and research and experiences from that and ask the group themselves, do you see this happening with you? And we'll get polls live from the group. And it's staggering that the stigmas, the expectations, the trends are so similar. We did one piece of work where there was an organisation who had teams in Japan right through to the west coast of America, and the themes were all the same. The trends were all the same. And the chat was like, I'd never realised. I didn't know. I thought it was just me. So in that sense, it's very, very eye-opening for an organisation to lift the lid on it, if you like, and just give permission, which is a big thing, I think, for men and dads. Yeah, I just as a little sidetrack, I think if I was invited along to a wellbeing session and there was a group of mums there and a few dads, I wouldn't say a word. I'd retreat and I'd just be like, yeah, everything's fine. Don't worry about me. Everything's fine. That's if I'd go along to a wellbeing session in the first place, because I don't like the word wellbeing. But if someone called out something for, we're just going to have a working dad's conversation. Oh, sounds like me, that. It's hard being a working dad, isn't it? Yeah, it can be. I'll go along to that. It's well-being, but disguised in language that dads like to use, and dedicated. And I think there's such an importance around that dedicated space that lends itself for much more meaningful conversations that help dads then contribute to more equality in the workplace because they want to. I had one woman once push back. She messaged me. It was on a Facebook forum, I think. When I first started putting articles out and talking about what it's like to be a dad, she said, what about moms? And I just thought, I'm not one. I don't know what that's like. If you want to set a mom group up, all the more power to you. I'm not one, so I can't talk about it. And I just think we need less of that and more of the, okay, we understand why this is important.
Yeah.
Let's do it, because it paints a much broader equality picture, if you like.
Absolutely. And that's, again, something that, Michelle and I have been passionate about, is it's not just one-sided. Although we don't have that inner perspective, we have husbands and we talk to other people and we try and get that balanced view, because it's never women against men. It's always, we're in this together and we want to just find a better way of living together. I'm really interested in what you said there around well-being, and I wonder whether I've never considered that before, but I wonder if that is more of a a feminine term, or does relate more to women than men.
I mean, I'd be interested to find that out myself, actually, if it is more of a feminine term. I think for me, my initial response to that is probably it goes up to that sort of intangible well-being. I can't touch that. I can't. What can I do about it? Whereas if we were, look, we're just gonna have a chat about money management for dads, or we're gonna have a chat about how we can be a bit better at home. Oh, that sounds all right. It's not about being perfect.
Yeah.
It's just a bit better, because everyone can always be a bit better.
Yeah.
It's like, what can I do? A well-being session isn't about what I can do. That's just theory.
Yeah.
I want practical. And for me, it's a subtle but important difference there.
Yeah, that's a really interesting insight. Yeah, thank you for that. I want to ask you as well, we always ask our guests for a book recommendation. So this can be on anything, whether it's personal development or family, or is there anything that kind of springs to mind as what you would recommend to our listeners as a good read?
Yeah, sure. I'm trying to rack my brains back to when I first started out. I've just scribbled down a couple here. I'm a big Audible fan. I listen whether I'm in the gym or if I'm walking to work, or wherever I get a few minutes, I'll just stick my earphones in and absorb Audible. And I always find myself going back to work by Jim Rohn, who's a personal development guru before the gurus were horrible. His work is fantastic, very much about personal development, but with a professional slant to it as well. So there's a Audible book. It's about 18 hours long or something, of collected talks and presentations. That's really good, and it's really helped me, I think, with my mindset and sort of journey and development plan. So anything by Jim Rohn, whether that's on Audible or YouTube or the good old fashioned paper book as well. And then I guess a couple more modern ones. From a professional sense, I've got a marketing background, so there's a book behind me if this does ever get onto video, called They Ask You Answer, which is probably one of my favourite marketing books of recent time.
Familiar with that one.
Just a fabulously simple concept that so many businesses miss. And I think it should be read by a lot of business owners or marketing teams and sales teams as well.
And that's Marcus Sheridan, that one, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I was fortunate enough to speak to him on one of the podcasts that I run for my B2B sales work. And he's a great guy, really, really helpful guy. And like I say, the concept is so simple, but so many businesses miss it. So I think if you're looking for a more modern marketing approach around your professional setting, I'd start there. I think it's a great read.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I love his concept, and I always think of him as the pool guy. But I would definitely recommend his book, because as you say, just answering the questions that people answer is just the most simplest term of marketing, but the bit that everybody misses. So,
everyone hides behind it. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's been so lovely to talk to you, Rob. Really enjoyed that. And where can people go? We'll put some links in the show notes, but where can people go to find out more about working with you, or to buy your book and your deck of cards?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. So you can find me personally, Rob Taylor. It's quite a common name. But Rob Taylor, good luck trawling through 1,000 of those. dadsinbusiness.co.uk. Also, Dads in Business is on LinkedIn. So if you search LinkedIn for Dads in Business. And then from a professional sense as well, I have a B2B sales agency called Plan, Grow, Do. If you want to find me on there as well, you'll get me there. I'm all over the place.
Fabulous. Yeah, and I say we'll put those links in the show notes as well. So thank you once again. Really good talking to you, and lots of takeaways there. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me along, Laura. Good to chat.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. We rely heavily on word of mouth, so if you found value in this episode, please hit subscribe and share it with family and friends. If you'd like to find out a bit more about us, you can find us on our Facebook group, Pair Entrepreneurs Club, or alternatively on Instagram, PairEntrepreneurs_club. We hope you have a great week, and we look forward to talking to you next time.